Hey everyone, this is Russell and welcome to mission number 4, should you choose to accept it. Today we're going to be talking about hooks and stories and testing a whole bunch of them. But before we do, I want to make sure that you followed the process from yesterday. So yesterday, you guys should have published your origin story. All good superheroes, they have an origin story. All good characters have an origin story. Everyone's got it. Now you've got one as well. If you haven't published it yet, you need to stop because you're breaking the rules and I want you to be successful, so you need to follow the rules. So go back and publish your origin story. I know it's painful sometimes, but it's worth it, I promise you, okay? And so that was your story, right? That was your first story. Now, if you look at that, I want you to understand a couple of core principles that are gonna help, okay? So you told your story once, but within that story, there's a whole bunch of different hooks, right? They're gonna get somebody to come in and listen to that story. So there's story and then there's hooks, okay? So for every story you tell, there's probably, on the low end, at least 3, and more likely probably 300 like hooks that are found inside of that story. Does that make sense? So if you remember last week when we talked about offer hacking, and we went and we were looking at some of, like I showed you Drew Manning's Fit to Fat to Fit, right? And if you look at that, he was driving everybody to the same page where he was telling his origin story, right? But he had tons of different ads, and so there were tons of different hooks he was putting out there to get people to come and listen to his story. Okay, and so the hooks can be a lot of things. Like for his, like one of his hooks was a picture with him standing in front of Lucky Charms cereal. Like an image is a hook, right? Some are different headlines, some are different podcast episodes, some are different things. Like when I did the Expert Secrets book, right? Like I told my origin story about why this book was so exciting, right? Why they should buy it. So I told the origin story. I made him an offer for people to buy the book. But when I started doing my ads, I couldn't just tell the same story over and over and over and over again. I could, but eventually it stops working as good, right? And so if you look at this, for example, as an example of it, right? Practical application. So here's expertsecrets.com. There's a video of me telling my origin story about why I created this book and why you're gonna want it, and I made him a special offer. Okay, so I had a hook, story, and offer that we'll go deeper into. But then as I start creating ads, I have to have a whole bunch of different hooks to get people excited, right? So there's hook, there's all these different hooks I'm throwing out there. Okay, and each hook's gonna have a story as well and an offer, just like we talked about, right? Like the ad, there's a hook story offer on the ad, there's hook story offer on the landing page, there's hook story offer everywhere. But I'm putting out all these different little hooks. Okay, so for example, when we did the Expert Secrets book, I was doing all sorts of stuff. As I was writing the book, I was setting out all these hooks, right? Like I would write the chapter in here on the hero's 2 journeys, for example, right? So I do the hero's 2 journey and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I do a podcast episode about the hero's 2 journey. I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, I'm working on this book. It's amazing. You're gonna love it. It's called Expert Secrets. It's gonna be coming out later this year. But I want to tell you one of the principles I'm talking about, which is the hero's 2 journeys. And I tell the whole story I tell my Epiphany Bridge story. So again, here's our Epiphany Bridge story, right? Hoop bloop. Just geeking out. Like I told my Epiphany Bridge story about why I'm so excited about the hero's 2 journeys. I tell the story and I talk about Michael Hagen. I talk about Will Smith and about the thing, and I tell the whole story behind it, why I'm so excited. And all of a sudden they're like, the hero's 2 journey, and they're freaking out. And they're like, and it builds up all this tension. They can't buy the book yet. Right? And then like there's pictures of me. While we're writing the book, there's pictures of me holding the book. And then since the book's launched, I've done Facebook Lives on basically every image inside this book. I've done a Facebook Live talking about the image, telling the story behind the image. And all these are little hooks I'm putting out there, all to drive people back to the origin story of the product I'm trying to sell. Okay, does that make sense? And so for you guys, I want you to think about that is that every story there's going to be at least 1, 2, 3, there's going to be tons of different hooks. And as you're trying to create new ads and put new creative out there to get people in, this is stuff we'll be going in deeper as we keep moving on, I'm going to be looking for different hooks. Okay, so I want you thinking for your origin story that you told yesterday, what are some of the other hooks about the origin story? Okay, so let's just say you told your origin story and you went through here and you did the whole Epiphany Bridge script, you told your origin story, right? Now I want you to come back and think, okay, inside of this Epiphany Bridge story, what are some of the hooks that I have I could bring out that could be another episode of the podcast or another episode of my next blog post, okay? So in here I could look at this thing and be like, okay, I told the whole thing and there's this part about the plan. So maybe I take the plan right here, I'm gonna pull it out, and this is now gonna be a hook to get people more interested in my story, right? So then my second podcast episode will be like, hey, yesterday I told you guys my origin story, and one of the things I talked about really briefly, but everyone keeps asking about is the plan I created. So what was the plan? Let me tell you, and then get behind the scenes of and tell the whole Epiphany Bridge story about how you came up with the plan, okay? And so that's a hook about your story, okay? And then maybe there's another one where you're like, hey, everyone who listened to episode number 1, everyone keeps asking about about what it felt like when I had this huge transformation. Let me tell you that story. And then there's a hook right here, right? So inside of each story, there are hooks you can pull out. There's images you can pull out. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to use for ads and a whole bunch of stuff in the future. But for right now, while you're creating, and you're like, Russell, I did the first podcast episode. I did the first blog post. What should I publish tomorrow? I've committed to a year of this. How am I going to do it? I don't know how to do it. All you're doing is you're coming back and you're taking the core story you're telling and then pulling out different hooks and you start telling those stories, and those are other episodes. Does that make sense? So for right now, this first week of your publishing platform, the first episode was you telling your story. The next 6, so this is the first week, needs to be pulling out different hooks and going deep on each individual parts of these hooks, okay? Different hooks inside your story, okay? So if you're telling an Epiphany Bridge story about why you wrote a book, find little hooks inside this book that you can then tell the story about that, right? Or if it's about a physical product, tell different stories about different ways, like other hidden benefits you have of this product. Like I bought this product because I was going to use it for whatever, but let me tell you the story. I also used it over here doing this other thing, right? And here's the cool story about someone else, how they're using the product. Here's how I found out about the product. Or just you're going to start telling different hooks, and this becomes more episodes for you. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you doing. So this gives you like kind of the next week planned out of what you're going to be doing. Okay, so that's the first part of your assignment. Okay, and that gives you the rest of this week kind of built out. All right. Now I'm going to transition to the second piece of this. Okay, because this is going to tie back into what we started creating last week. Okay, so last week on mission number 3, we talked about offer sequencing. Do you guys remember this? So basically, what had you guys do? If you remember this, we created this huge chart with all the different potential products you could create, right? All these different potential products. And then I had the basic funnel that we're building together. And this is the actual funnel we're going to be building through this challenge, you guys. So it's very simple. All these things we're doing all build upon each other, right? So the first is your squeeze page. And if you remember, I said, okay, pick like one sexy, exciting thing, grab that thing and pull it down, and that's what you're going to be giving away on the squeeze page, right? And then I said, okay, so here's a little picture of that thing. And then you're going to have the offer page here where you can tell the story of whatever you're selling. And then you're going to have an offer. So you're going to pick out like maybe it's this thing, and it's these 4 or 5 things, or what you go to create this offer, right? And then you have the upsell page here, which is basically going to be, again, a couple things here, and you're saying, okay, well, this one's going to be this part of the offer, this is going to be this part, so on and so forth. Okay, so we already kind of did this, if you remember, on mission 3. If you haven't done this yet, it's time to go back in time and remember that. Okay, so the next thing I want you guys doing, coming back here, is number 1 is figuring out what's the story behind this offer that you created for this page. What is the story? Okay, and that's going to be your next episode, which is episode 8, right? What's the story about how you created this? Okay, so for example, for me, one of the squeeze pages I showed you guys earlier was the marketing secrets black book. Do you guys remember this? Okay, so it was basically 99 marketing secrets that'll change your business, change your life. So what's the story behind how we created that thing? Okay, so the story behind it is I've done over 500 episodes of my podcast. In fact, I started my podcast back, here's me jumping into backstory, right? I started my podcast back right after my company basically went bankrupt. I had over 100 employees that I left, almost 80 of them overnight, and then I started rebuilding. I decided I'm going to start a podcast. And so I started sharing this journey, and I'm lucky I started back then because I didn't know what it was going to become. I started doing my podcast 3 or 4 days a week. I was doing this podcast, and as I was doing it, what happened is I started growing my company. I started sharing all the ups and the downs, all the way from failure after failure to success, failure, to eventually what happened is during that period of time, we launched ClickFunnels and grew it to over $100 million in sales. So what's cool is you're able to see this entire journey of going from 0 to $100 million in this episode, or in this podcast. And it's, again, 500 plus episodes. And a lot of people go and they binge listen to it all. But I've had a lot of people say, Russell, I don't have time to listen to 500 episodes and catch up on 5 years of your life. What's the best stuff? Like, if I could, how do I find the best things in there? I thought, man, wouldn't that be cool if I could create something that would give everybody all the best stuff that I had to kind of, almost be like cliff notes of the entire, 5 years of my life. And so I had Julie Stoyan, who is an amazing writer and one of my friends. I had her go and listen to all 5 years of episodes for you. And I had to pay her to do that. So all the time of, 5 years worth of time, I had to pay her for that. Then she went through each episode and figured out from all the episodes, what's the best stuff out of all of them. And she found all the best things from every single episode, put them together, and sometimes I talk about similar things on 3 or 4 episodes. She put them all together, and she basically broke it down to like, of all the stuff that's happened in the last 5 years, there's 99 things that are the most important. And some of these are based on personal development, some's based on marketing, some's based on sales, some's based on traffic, and we put them all together into this book, and then she went and she summarized them all into little 500-word articles. So we took all those 500-word articles and put them into a book. It cost me over $10,000 in cost to pay her to go and watch them all, research, write, and publish the whole book. And now I'm actually gonna give you this book for free because I think it's something that's going to change your life. Okay, there's the story behind that little piece of the offer. Okay, so that's the story right there. So what I would do for you then is your next episode is like, what's the story about the thing you're giving away? And maybe your thing's not done yet, and that's totally okay. Tell the story behind it, like, hey, you guys, right now I'm working on this project and it's crazy and I'm excited and I just got to tell you about it because it's going to be so cool. So let me tell you the story behind it, and then tell the story about what you're creating. And get people excited. You're going to start feeling like you'll get people's responses back. Like, are they excited? Are they not excited? As you explain it, it'll help you to start testing your material and test how you tell the story to get people excited about this thing. Okay? And so make that your next episode of your blog post, your podcast, your Facebook Live, whatever your thing is, and test out the story. Okay? Now, if you have that, then it's like, okay, I have the story. Now, step number 2 are what are hooks that I can pull out of that story? Okay, so for the Marketing Secrets Black Book, there's 99 marketing secrets. So each secret can be a hook, right? And if you follow my Instagram, you probably notice that all the time we pull images out of that. And it's like, hey, secret number 42, blah, 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 blah. And there's like a hook that we set, right? So what are all the different hooks that could come out of that story? Okay, and so these can become Facebook Lives or blog posts or images on Instagram or whatever wherever you're publishing at. These can happen. Okay, so tell the story about what you're creating here, and then pull out some hooks and tell those stories as well. Okay, then I transition now to the next page. What's the story about this product you are going to be selling them, right? Okay, so for me, let's say that this product is the Expert Secrets book, right? What's the story about how I created this book? Okay, and so I'm going to tell that story here, and that's going to be the next thing. Like, hey guys, right now, some of you know I'm working on a book. I'm so excited for it. Let me tell you about the book. Or I'm working on this video course, this trading course, or this new physical product. We're working with China, and we're building this thing out, or whatever your product is. Like, what's the story behind this product? So you tell the story. Right? And that's your next episode. Okay? Again, we're just testing our material right now. We don't care if people are listening or not listening. If the product's not ready, it doesn't matter. It builds up anticipation, excitement. You're just going to be telling the story. And number 2 is like, hey, that story, there's a whole bunch of different hooks to get people into the story. So then what are the hooks? And this can be other potential episodes. Okay? And even if you're not going to do one for everything, like write out what are all the hooks you could use for here. Okay? So we're going to use them later. When we start doing ads, like literally for the Expert Secrets book, I would say conservatively, we probably created 60 different hooks from this book alone that have all run as different ads. Okay, .com Secrets, same thing. Funnel Hacker Cookbook, like all my things, like all these hooks become different ads we're using to hook people to bring them into this story. Setting hook, bring him into the story. Send hook, bring him into the story. Set hook, bring him into the story. Okay, and same thing here. What's the story about what the upsell offer is going to be, and then what are the hooks? Okay, and so this should give you some ideas of stuff you can start publishing, material you can start testing. And again, I recommend publishing these things live, again, either through your podcast, your blog, or your videos, whatever you're doing. Publish these things live, even though stuff's not done yet. Just get people excited about the process of you building it. I watched Stephen Larson. He left working for ClickFunnels. He was launching his new thing. He ended like, it was December 31st was the last day, January 1st he was starting. January 1st he launched his podcast. And guess what? Episode 1 was him telling his origin story. And then he started telling all these things about what he was creating. And he started building his following. And eventually what happened is that all these people who were going crazy listened to him talking about all the stuff he was creating. And they were freaking out. And when he's like, hey guys, it's live. Boom, they all went and bought it, and he made a lot of money in a very short period of time. Okay, so don't stress out like, well, my product's not done yet. That's okay, tell them about it. Oh, but Russell, they didn't sign the NDA yet. It doesn't matter. Okay, nobody's gonna steal your idea. Just tell them what you're creating, tell them why you're creating, tell them the Epiphany Bridge story about why you did it. Okay, again, it's coming back to you telling the reason why, like what it was that sent you on this journey to create this, or to create this, or to find this, or to interview so-and-so about this, or whatever the thing is. It's what's the Epiphany Bridge story about why you did that. That's what you're publishing, is these stories. Don't think that every time I have to do a podcast, I gotta teach them 50,000 things, right? I have to have a blog post where I teach them all this stuff. People get sucked into and engaged with stories. They come back to listen to stories, okay? Think about your favorite TV show, your favorite movies. Like, why do you keep going back? It's not to learn something typically. It's to get a story, to feel a feeling, to have an epiphany of like, oh my gosh, I need that thing. Oh man, Russell just taught me the hero's 2 journeys. Like, I understand it. But even if you teach them word for word what's in here, they're still going to want the product and the thing to go deeper, to be able to reference it, to look back on what it is. Okay? If you ever notice, I publish everything. I don't hide these things. I keep publishing them out there because it creates desire for the other things you're doing. Okay? So this one we're going to do now is basically, I'm going to start diagramming this stuff out because you've got 365 days worth of episodes that you are committed to. And you're probably like, I don't know what to do. So number one, week one was your origin story. Week 2, 3, 4 episodes are your hooks. You pulled out of your origin story, however you're able to. And then boom, now you move next week. Now it's what's the stories about this? What's the stories about this? What's the stories? And bring in hooks. And this should keep you going for the next month, 2 months, a whole bunch of different things as you're developing this, creating it, getting it all done. And when it's all done, what's nice is we have all this built up anticipation. And when you do the episode that's like, hey guys, remember that stuff I've been talking about the last month? It's live. Go check it out. Because next week we're going to be building out your guys' funnels, and then we're going to start pushing people into them, and they're start coming through this process. Okay? So that's what's happening right now. That's the assignment. Number one, figure out for your origin story. Figure out the other hooks you can pull out of it for new episodes, either your blog, your podcast, or your Facebook Lives. Then come back here to the offer sequencing section we talked about. Take this plan that you've already created and figure out, why did I create that? What's the story behind this? What's the story behind this? What's the story behind this? And then figure out, what are the hooks? What are the hooks behind all the different things inside of this? And start building out a map of, here's all the different potential episodes I have. And now go and start, now you have everything you need to start creating and start testing your material over and over and over again as we're creating this whole process. Does that make sense? So that's the game plan. That's what you guys got to do. And that's it. So there's your assignment for right now. Keep doing this throughout the rest of this week, and then continue to keep doing it throughout as we keep going on, because this is not something that goes away. This is a new task that's going to be added to what you're doing. Last week we talked about finishing the products and building out the products, and keep doing those. When the products are done, though, they're kind of done and they're finished. This is something that just keeps happening. You're always publishing, because this is the fuel that's going to fuel everything you're doing moving forward and in the future. Okay? So get that done, you guys. And then next week we're moving on to the funnel. That's week number 3, and I'm excited to get you guys deeper to actually start creating this funnel, plugging in all the products, plugging in the stories, all that kind of stuff. That's the game plan. So thanks again, you guys, and I will see you soon.